It's the same one as we did yesterday. That is not an editable PDF. Please make sure that you print and use that one. Just like I said, if you guys complete this with me, you will leave a daily grade on this. Pretty wicked deal for you guys. Okay. News on school this week. We are staying out until is your guys' scheduled day. This will be the day we do this until at least if we go back to school. April, we'll just have normal class. If not, we will do something on here up so you guys can. So go ahead and print open the poem, whatever version of the response you're using, and take about 2 minutes. Get all your materials ready, and then continue on in about 2 minutes. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. It's been about 2 minutes, so let's get ready to go through our to-do list today. Make sure you have your materials out, and then this will be about 40 minutes today if we roll with this correctly. Now, just like yesterday, we're going to be using the TSP Fast analysis sheet to break down the poem. I had a lot of questions yesterday about, am I supposed to write this down? Am I supposed to write this down? The only things you need to write down are the things I tell you to write down. So don't worry about going any further on the sheet until you are ready to do so. So, if you're ready, let's do it. Okay, yesterday we did the title, we examined the title, and a lot of the responses we got where the road not taken was someone had to make a decision between two places. They chose to go one way or the other, and maybe about life choices, and all these were good ideas, and we will re-examine this a little bit today as we go along. Hey guys, welcome to day 2. Hey guys, welcome to day 2 of Class with Corona. Today we are going to continue our look
today as we go along.
Robert Frost, very famous. Just like yesterday, our goals are the same. Get your brains going, about 45 minutes today. Look at one of the coolest poems ever. And once again, hey guys, welcome to day 2 of Class with Corona. Today we are going to continue our look at Robert Frost's very famous poem. Just like yesterday, our goals are the same. Get your brains going, about 45 minutes today. Look at one of the coolest poems ever. And once again, watch my struggle with technology. You just need the same materials as you did yesterday. So links are on the site as well as on the screen. They're also on Google Classroom. So open up the same ones you had yesterday. If you did a Google form yesterday, as long as you submitted it, you can open it up, edit, and finish it. The TP Fast sheet, it's the same one as we did yesterday. That is not an editable PDF, so please make sure that you print it out if you're going to use that one. Just like I said yesterday, if you guys complete this with me, you will receive a grade replacement for a daily grade on this, so pretty wicked deal for you guys. Okay. No new news on school this week. We are continuing staying out until April.
You can open it up, edit, and finish it.
Is your guys'
the TP Fast sheet.
This will be the
same one as we did yesterday. That is not an editable PDF, so please make sure that you print it out if you're going to use that one.
We will do something
just like I said yesterday, if you guys complete this with me, you will receive a grade replacement for a daily grade on this, so pretty wicked deal for you guys. Okay.
2 minutes.
No new news on school this week. We are continuing staying out until April. Open up, edit, and finish it. You guys, the TP
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. It's been about 2 minutes, so let's get ready to go through our to-do list today. Make sure you have your materials out, and then this will be about 40 minutes today if we roll with this correctly. Now, just like yesterday, we're going to be using the TSP Fast analysis sheet to break down the poem. I had a lot of questions yesterday about, am I supposed to write this down? Am I supposed to write this down? The only things you need to write down are the things I tell you to write down. So don't worry about going any further on the sheet until you are ready to do so. So, if you're ready, let's do it. Okay, yesterday we did the title. We examined the title, and a lot of the responses we got were the road not taken was someone had to make a decision between two places. They chose to go one way or the other, maybe about life choices, and all these were good ideas, and we will re-examine this a little bit today as we go along. Here's a copy of the poem. Let's take a minute or two and re-familiarize ourselves with it. I'll read it once, and then you guys can kind of just read through it another time or two on your own so we can re-familiarize ourselves with what we are studying today. The Road Not Taken by the American poet Robert Frost. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveler, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though, as for that, the time passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay, in leaves no step had trotted black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. So take a minute, just kind of read through it and think about it on your own, and then we'll pick up in about a minute or so.
And both that morning equally lay, and leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Take a minute, just kind of read through it and think about it on your own, and then we'll pick up in about a minute or so.
All right, so let's take a moment. Let's recap where we're at yesterday. Yesterday we talked about what was the poem mostly about. We said that the poem was mostly about a person approached with two options and they had to make a choice. And based on that choice, they really could never go back. And though the speaker said he'd like to, he knew himself good enough to realize, hey, I'm not really going to ever go down the other one. So once I go down this path, there's no really turning back from it. And that's kind of what we summarized it as saying. Now, on your TP Fast sheet, we already did the title section. This is the second thing you should have filled out yesterday. We said the speaker was most likely the writer, but the speaker is definitely the protagonist in the story, the main character. Situation is that the speaker came upon two roads, had to make a decision, and is now kind of saying that eventually we will look at this situation and think kindly upon it because you made the best choice for you in the end. Point of view we said was first person, and the verb tenses were mainly past tense. Though in stanza 4 we used some future tense. We noticed there's a future tense. You said shall. So he said in the future I shall think back upon this decision. So there are your verb tenses. So if you have not filled out the A section, okay. If you have not figured out the S section, this is TS. So this is the speaker section. This is the S section. Go ahead, fill out the information that we talked about. I'll give you about a minute to get that copied in if you don't already have it done. Okay, and if you have any questions, pose them in the chat. I'll be responding live on the chat rather than out loud today because I want to pre-record this. Hopefully that works a little bit better than yesterday.
So there are your verb tenses. So if you have not filled out the A section, okay, if you've not Figure out the S section. This is TS. So this is the speaker section. This is the S section. Go ahead, fill out the information that we talked about. I'll give you about a minute to get that copied in if you don't already have it done. Okay? And if you have any questions, pose them in the chat. I'll be responding live on the chat rather than out loud today. I'm going to pre-record this. Hopefully that works much better than yesterday.
All right, so hopefully you have a response written there, and
so make sure if you
we're
haven't
now
done
going to
so
roll
already,
onto the
that
paraphrase
you are
section.
filling
So the
out
paraphrase
your
section was the last thing we did yesterday, and
TSP
when we
fast
paraphrased,
sheet
we broke
or
down the
S
poem
section
itself
in there.
and actually looked at what the poem is about. So let's go back. I'm going to flip back on here to
Kayla?
to the poem itself. And so, just to paraphrase, we looked at stanza 1. 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And B, one traveler, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. So we basically summarized this stanza by saying the traveler came down a road. He was given 2 choices, and in the first stanza he examines the first one. In the first one, he said that he's sorry he cannot travel both, which we said indicated that both paths looked reasonably decent. None looked ominous or foreboding. Both looked acceptable. And so, be one traveler, so he's by himself. He stood, looked down one as far as he could, and it bent in the undergrowth, which, if you take this literally, meaning his vision was obscured by things. But if you take this as a metaphor, he thought as far as he could about what was going to happen, and eventually the future became cloudy. So you could, if you're interpreting metaphorically, that's a little bit more what stanza 1 talks about. Stanza 2, then he looked at the other one. It looked just as fair, just as good, and perhaps maybe having the better claim, a little personification, because it was grassy and wanted wear. So it being grassy and wanting wear makes it look maybe slightly renewed, though as for the passing there, had warned them really about the same. So he basically says both paths have been taken about the same. Stanza 3, and both that morning equally lay. So they're equally, and leaves no step had trodden black. So that morning they both had been left alone. Neither one had taken either road that morning. Said, oh, I kept the first for another day. So by keeping the first for another day, it indicates he chooses the second one. Yet knowing how way leads to way, so basically knowing how life goes on, I doubted if I should ever come back. So basically, knowing how life goes, I'm probably never going to come back to the first, and even though I said I saved it for another day, it's probably not going to happen. He's saying I should be telling this story with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. So in the future, somewhere years in the future, I should be telling this with a sigh, meaning he's kind of thinking back on it. 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. So we look at these 4 stanzas. You kind of paraphrase it. A man's given 2 choices from road to which he should choose one of the 2. They look very similar. The first one, it had some undergrowth, couldn't really see down all the way. The second one had perhaps the better claim, is grassy and wanted wear. So he looks at both 2. He chooses the second one, and then he talks about he should be thinking back on this in the future because he took the one less traveled by, and that's made all the difference. So that's kind of your paraphrase. So back on the paraphrase section. So write a 1 to 3 sentences in the P part of your Google form or your P part in the TSP fast sheet. Just 1 to 3 sentences in general that summarizes what the poem is about. Now, we did that yesterday as well, so I'm going to give you about a 3-minute break to do this. If you've already done it, go grab you some snacks, grab you some cheese mix, and we'll be back in 3 minutes. Hey guys, so hopefully I think you all can hear me. if you can. Can you guys hear me at all? All right, cool. So those of you probably have this done yesterday. If you already have this done yesterday, then don't sweat it. If you lost it from yesterday, you can get caught up. So this should be good either way. If you weren't here yesterday, then this kind of gets you caught up. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are now back to the new part of the day today. And if you're just now catching up with us, cool. All we did was recap what we did yesterday. And so now we're going to look at the figurative language. So when we talk about figurative languages, I did include some examples or a list of different types on the bottom if you've forgotten some. So let's look beyond the literal at figurative and sound devices in this poem. So I want you guys to pick 2 examples. So find 2 examples and explain how they affect meaning and feeling in the poem. So don't just like, hey, that's a personification. Cool. How does that affect the story? How does it affect the poem? So I'm going to go back and flip back to this page. So you're going to try to look at this and find 2 examples of figurative language and sound devices. Now, when you find these, please record these on your TSP fast sheet and also in their figurative language sections on your Google Forms. So I'm going to flip back to this. I'm going to give you all about 5 minutes. Okay, about 5 minutes. And I want you to find your 2 examples. Please use the exact words. Don't just give me some general reference. Let's use the exact words. And 5 minutes, find those, and then write those answers down. In 5 minutes, we're going to share for about 2 minutes. Then we'll slide on. So 5 minutes, find your stuff, record it on either your Google Form or your TSP fast sheet. If you have neither, write it on a piece of notebook paper, and we'll be fine. So you do not need to write your answers in the chat at this point. When I tell you to here in a couple of minutes, we'll go ahead and do that. But go ahead and start investigating and finding your figurative devices now. And here's your copy of the poem. Hey, I will tell you guys this. It's pretty hard to find any in the first one. The second one's really, really easy. The third and fourth are also kind of hard. The fourth one you probably won't get. There is one. There's irony in it, but I would probably focus on stanza 2. Yeah, Manuel, I'd say so. She's all right. What do I do? What do you mean, what do you do? Hot Rod Mason, what do you mean? So we should be looking for figurative devices right now. If you have them, go ahead and put them on your TVSP fast sheet and your Google form. So try to find similes, metaphors, hyperbole, alliteration. If you don't know what any of those words mean, I highly suggest you look them up. You guys got about a minute left to finish your responses. So there's a couple examples. Try to wrap up your response in the next minute. There's at least one example of personification in stanza 2. Alright, I think pretty much everybody has had a chance to respond at this point. So, we should have been on this. Let's look for some examples of some figurative language. So let's look at stanza 1. Did anybody find one in stanza 1? If you found an example in stanza 1, please put the line number, the type, and what it meant. Type that in the chat now. I'll go ahead and give you guys about 30-40 seconds. So, example from stanza 1, please. Alright, that should be better. I just fixed all that stuff. The stream program's kind of iffy sometimes. Let's look at some examples that we had from the first stanza.
All right, so
2 roads diverge in a yellow wood.
Find
I'm sorry, I could not travel both. And be one traveler along I stood, and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. So when I look at this one initially,
let's look at stanza 2.
I don't see any similes. There is as in there, but you're not comparing 2 different things. As far as I could. So that one's not necessarily a simile. Metaphor. Now somebody might have said, well, it talks about bent in the undergrowth. Trees can bend. I don't think it's necessarily a personification example. So not really that one. So as far as number 1 goes, As far as number 1 goes, I didn't really see any obvious examples of it. But when you look at stanza 2, I think there are some pretty easy ones. So if you found any in stanza 2, go ahead and record yours now, and we'll talk about it here in just a second. So please type yours in the chat if you picked some from part 2. Cool. All right, so we should have seen some in here. Let's see what we have. We'll talk about those via the chat, but when I look at them, better claim, having a better claim possibly. It wanted where, that's personification. Notice also the rhyming pattern in here. Fair, where, and there. When you look at those 3 end words on the end of each of those stanzas, it's kind of interesting that it shows that they're fair, then the where, there is. So if you look at just the last word on each, it's kind of interesting that it kind of makes, it says it's a fair claim, it where's, there the same. So it's kind of like you can kind of almost get a synopsis of everything just off the last word. But we probably should have noticed some significant examples of personification in stanza 2. Go on to stanza 3. Both equally lay, little personification probably. In steps, in leaves, no step had trodden black. Don't really see much there. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet knowing how way leads to onto way, I doubted if I should ever come back. So probably mostly clean on that one. And then the last one, I really didn't notice one either. So should have some stuff here. If we have not finished the figurative device on your sheet, I'm gonna give you about another 30 seconds. Okay, on your sheet or on your Google form, please do that so we can slide on, please. All right, just as fair as personifying the appearance of it to like a person and having perhaps the better claim as another personification. Claiming it wanted where is also a personal trait, so any of those are good. Okay, so now we've got figurative language done. Let's stop for a second and make sure we're all good. Now we're going to have to go back to the TSP fast sheet. So I'm going to roll. I'm going to pop that up really fast. And blow this thing up. Now we've got stuff through here. Now we need to finish off the attitude, the shifts, the title, and the theme one more time. So when we look at the attitude, we talk about that at kind of like the author's tone, right? So looking at attitude, we want to in general think about tone. So let's look at the poem. What kind of attitude do we have in the poem here? So I'm going to try to split screen this one. If I can roll with this correctly, Mac makes this slightly more complicated than other things to do, but we'll be okay. Just bear with me about 30 seconds. Alright, cool. So, we've got this thing. Let's look for some attitude here in our poem. Boom. Poem. Yes. Awesome. Look for attitude. Okay, so when we look for attitude here in our story, and we look at this attitude, it's kind of obvious. So I want you guys to look through it for about 1 minute on your own, and then type in the chat when I tell you to what you think the attitude or tone of this poem is. Okay, just in general. Go ahead and do that first. Go ahead now. You don't have to write anything yet. Just think about it and identify it. Okay, once you have found that, it's been about a minute, so you had about your minute. Go ahead and type it in, and then I want your specific piece of evidence that identifies that. So, what's the attitude, and then you put a dash beside it if you'd like in your evidence, and then make sure you record this on your form and on your TSP fast sheets. If you're handwriting this, right there would be awesome. So take that for a minute and go ahead and record those in the chat, and then on your sheet, I'll give you about 30-40 seconds. It shouldn't take real long, and then we'll discuss it a little bit. So, looking for the attitude in this thing. What's the author feel like? Gavin, chill, please. Killing the vibe. So, Emmanuel, if you're trying to figure out what to say, just we'll talk about it here in a second. You can kind of see it. All right, so let's look at some tones we chose. If we kind of look at the poem and semi-understand it, I think we probably should have come up with an attitude of something like it's inescapable. It's ironic, possibly at the end. When you look at the end, look at stanza 4. I should be telling this with a sigh. So when we look at really the attitude here, it's kind of almost like matter-of-factly. There is no real fluff in it. And then when we get to the last one, I should be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages hence, 2 roads diverged, and I took the one less traveled by, and that's made all the difference. Okay, so I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages hence. So these last 3 lines is what he's telling. So this is like, if you look at the poem, the whole thing. So this is what kind of happened. He said, "I'll be telling this." Notice the stuff below with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages in the future. So I'm going to be telling this to future generations when I'm old. 2 roads split up in a wood, and I took the one less traveled. And that's made all the difference. So it's ironic in the fact that if you look back at the text, was there really any less traveled road? Not really. There really wasn't one. If we look back in stanza 2, he said they had worn about the same, but now in the last one, he's saying he took the one less traveled by. So he's literally like saying, in the future, I'm probably going to lie to people about this, but you kind of do that, though, when you shape reality as after the fact. So he's looking at after the fact. He's like, well, when I'm old, I probably will say this incorrectly. I'll probably will tell you that I made the right choice. But during that time, I really didn't have a choice, right or wrong. I just made a choice and lived with it. It's kind of what the poem's about. It's making a decision and living with it and being happy about it. And he's saying when he gets old, he's going to say, oh, yeah, I picked the one that nobody else did. It makes me sound original. But he really didn't do that. So it's ironic that he says one thing, but it's actually fake. So he kind of realizes when he's younger that when he's older, he's going to screw this up and lie about it. But as of right now, he's still functional. Okay? So last one, we're like about 3 easy parts left. Looking for shifts, title, and theme. So shifts, looking for a change. I think we can easily see some shifts here in the last stanza. If you guys notice, what's the shift in this line? Okay, respond to that in the chat, please. What's the shift in this line? We have a definite shift in the highlighted line here. First 2 lines kind of give the same shift. I'll be typing my response in there. And then lastly, we can see this shift also in the last stanza, last 3
What's
lines.
What's the shift?
He says that took the one less traveled by. Well, that's a shift in truth, isn't it? He didn't take the one less traveled by. We looked at the one that said he'd taken the one that was really about the same. So we see that shift. We also see a shift, and we talked about narration earlier. We talked about speaker. The speaker, in the end, is he a reliable narrator? He's saying he is now, but in the future, will he be reliable? Not really. So we see 3 definitive shifts in this. Take about a minute. If you haven't, pick one of those, put it on your sheet or your Google form, and then we'll slide on. I can't hear anything. All right, cool. Now, let's look back at the title again. So we're down to the last 2, and these are pretty easy. So let's re-examine the title of the poem, "The Road Not Taken." So now that we kind of understand the poem a little bit, good, Presley. Exactly. So we look back at this, "The Road Not Taken" again. What do you guys think? Did you really change your ideas? Go back and look at what you put in the first box for title, and if you would, go ahead and rewrite what you think it means now at the end. So take about a minute or 2 and rewrite what that means at the end. Okay, cool. Go ahead and do that now, please. Go ahead and write it here, and then you can go ahead and once you've written it on your sheet, go ahead and write it in the chat, and I'll respond to you through the chat. All right. Okay, so you should probably have that done. Let's look at what we put in the chat.
Once you have it on your sheet, go ahead.
Take about 20, 30 seconds to respond to that in the chat. Okay, and lastly, let's move on to the theme. So what is the poem saying? What is the message? And this is really like a very theme-heavy poem. It's one of those easy things to kind of discover. Well, if you kind of understood the poem, we look at that. When we really look at this poem specifically, I think there's a whole lot of ideas behind it. One of the easiest ideas to identify in this poem, I think we could all agree on, is that many paths look the same, and you're not going to know what's going to happen in the future, so you need to choose one and make the best out of it. I think that's the most glaringly obvious theme or message in this poem. He kind of makes it clear there is no right or wrong to your choice. You look at the past, they look almost the same. And he says basically in the future, and we'll look back at this and say, yeah, look, I picked the right one. But as we see in the tense in the first 3 stanzas, it doesn't really matter which one he says or which one he chooses. They're virtually the same. So take a second, if you would please, type your theme in, and if you would, type your theme in your Google form and put it on here, and then put your response after that. If you would type it in the chat, we'll talk about it for about 40 seconds or so, and that'll end the day's Corona class. So it'll take about 30, 40, maybe a minute even. Write that response down, and then we'll talk about it for a few seconds, and I'll upload. Also, guys, don't forget, check back with me when we get back to next weekend. I will post if we have anything new coming up. Hopefully by then we'll have some more information about when we're going back, or if we're going back, or however that works. Stay safe, be good to each other, help the parents out, do what you got to do. Okay. If you guys need anything, shoot me an email. I'll do anything I can for you. Thank you all for attending today. Thank you for attending class at home. Now, go enjoy some sunshine. It's marvelous outside today. And have a wonderful day. All right, leaving it up for about 10 seconds. Yeah, Gavin, there's like places there you can go get free lunch and stuff. It's on the school webpage.